Yo, what's going on, boys? It is day number 8 of reading through the book of Job. We are going to be looking at something a little bit different for today. We are actually going to be looking at a new response by one of Job's friends by the name of Bildad. Bildad, I think I'm saying that right. I may be saying that wrong. Correct me. This is one of the other friends that came when they heard that Job was stripped away of everything. So it's the second friend. There's three friends. It's Eliphaz and Bildad, and I can't remember the other one's name. We'll get to that here in a couple of days. But it's going to be a pretty short video, as this entire chapter covers this, and then we go back to Job, continuing to make his replies. So first, I want to take a look at verse 7, where he makes an interesting kind of point, and it made me think about my current life, and maybe it relates to your life as well. Verse 7 says, Your beginnings will seem humble, so prosperous will your future be." So when you really take a second to really kind of let that set in, you really get this, kind of feeling of, reformation. That's the word that kind of came to mind for me. And what I wrote down is that, reformation is a struggle at the beginning. Why? Because you're having to reform yourself into a new version of yourself that God calls you to be. But this reformation will make you stronger over time to be better for the future. And a current example of that for me is this group that I'm in, that I go to every Monday. It's called Catharos, and it's the Jesus pathway to sexual immorality. And so every week we meet on Mondays and we watch a video by this guy named Blaine Bartell. And, we watch and we get to learn about how we can, really purify ourselves from that desire of sexual sin. And this week we were talking about the reformation of the heart, redefining your heart. So, we hear so much, and, we hear it comes through here, and then we place it down in the heart. But it's that response, that heart telling the brain to do this. And one of the things that, we were sharing in our group was that, the heart is the most powerful, organ in the body. It overpowers the mind 1,000 times to 1. And some people may say, well, was it the brain made for thinking? It's like, well, yes, it is. But the heart represents the soul. It represents the core of the whole body. The brain is essentially just, the battery that charges it. Now, the heart is really where our, soul rests. It's at, right here, at the center of the body. And, it resides in a way that, it powers everything. Everything in the body relies on the heart, even the brain. But at the same time, the heart also relies on the brain. Now, here's the thing, our thoughts, can go into many different directions. And what we think has an effect on our soul. And now it's the job of our thinking to be diverted into a different direction that allows our heart to be redefined and reformed. And I know I'm going off topic to what, we're looking at Job here, but, really picture yourself, redefining your heart. And I think that's what, Bildad is saying, is like, look, redefine your heart. These negative thoughts are putting a toll on your heart to where you can't focus and you can't think straight. Yes, this thing that's happened to you is treacherous and it is terrible, but you have to remember that this is a reformation. That's what's happening here. This is God, reforming you, not as, someone who was in the pit, but as someone to be better than your previous self. And you're sitting here trying to beat yourself up, saying that, you had all this and that. Like, yes, you did, but now you need to be having better. And God's like, look, you had all this, but wait, there's more. There's more. Now he's going to show you that. Now you just really have to wait and see until that happens. And so we get a glimpse of that and a second response that he has into the... we get a second glimpse of that into verse 8 and 9, where Bildad says, "Ask the former generation and find out what their ancestors learned, for we were born only yesterday and know nothing, and our days on the earth are but a shadow." So think of it like this. We have a life that is composed of many different aspects. And one of the big things that we think about is, we ask a lot of questions about, how does this work? Why does this happen? How does this work? How do I get from like simple question like how does a car work? Like how does this business work? And we ask these questions. Well, who do we ask these questions to? Well, we ask them to experts. We ask them to people who are experienced in that field. We ask them to people who know about what's going on. So, Bill and I'd say, look, instead of you sitting here just, throwing these things, why don't you talk to people who have been through similar situations? Maybe not people who have lost everything, but people who have lost things in your life and have, recovered and have gotten better from it. Because sometimes when we ask questions to these people who have similar situations, it allows us to help guide our lives back together as we, are trying to put our life, into, full. And, it may sound confusing at first to say, well, why would I need to let someone else guide me to make me better? Well, because if you want to know an answer to something, you can't, do it on your own. You need someone else to do it. And yes, you have God there with you, but God is saying, look, there's these people out there who have, answers to your question. There's people out there who can answer your question like that. All you have to do is ask. And it's a lot more of just this, fear that people have, like, well, I don't want to be, let down. I don't want to be looked at as this person who people look at as, oh, well, he's asking this, he must not know what he's doing. Like, well, more or less, it needs to be more of a, look, I don't understand what's happened. I don't understand how this works. Can you please explain this to me like I'm a 5-year-old and just be like, look, this is how this works. Here's point A, here's point B, here's these little details about it. This is how it happened. Or maybe someone says, look, I did this, I felt ashamed of myself. Here's how I overcame it. And a lot of times they're gonna say it and you're gonna look at it and be like, well, that's impossible. Like, I can't do that. I can't just share my thoughts like that. And that's another thing, with my group, and it's, the reason why I wear this cross. I don't wear this cross as a way of telling people that I'm a Christian. I wear it as a reminder every day to keep pressing on forward and remind me that, my sins have been forgiven and that I have been made clean and that I need to restrain and say no to the flesh, not just to the thoughts that come to my head, but to those things that start happening to where you start feeling that sensation in, your flesh, and for the guys, you start feeling it, and, all over your body. You start having these feelings, and you're like, man, like, I don't know what's going on. Like, I want to do this, but I shouldn't. Like, I just can't. And it's that pleasure feeling that we have when we shouldn't do that. And that's another reason why I wear it. And, I wear it outside my shirt a lot of times, but, especially when I wear it inside my shirt, being that it's this little wood cross, it presses up against my chest. And it's not like a painful thing, but it's almost those things when you lean the wrong way or when you're, doing something wrong, you could feel it pressing against your skin. You're just like, ow, like, what is that? And you look and you're like, oh, like, then you look down and you're like, yeah, that's right. Like, it's pressing against me for a reason. And again, asking people for guidance is what's going to help us grow as individuals. So for the last set of verses, the bit of a longer one, it's verses 16 through 21. And I'm going to read it out first, and then I'll explain what it means. Where Bildad says, they are like a well-watered plant in the sunshine, spreading its roots over the garden. It intertwines its roots around a pile of rocks and looks for a place among the rough stones. But when it is torn from its spot, the place it disowns it and says, I never saw you. Surely its life wanders away, and from the soil other plants grow. Surely God does not reject the one who is blameless or strengthen the hands of the evildoers. He will yet fill your mouth with laughter and your lips with shouts of joy. So he's kind of adding on to what he said in verses 8 and 9. Like, look, these people has spread their roots for so long. And even to Job himself, it's like, look, you have reached so many people. Your roots and your, impacts of people have spread so far that those people can now thrive. Even though you have been stripped away of everything, that doesn't mean that they can't still thrive. They've grown so much. Your roots have gone so far that it's created new versions of people, and that those people can grow strong now as individuals. Like, yes, it took some time and they were relying on you, but now they have gotten stronger together, boy. They can become independent and continue to go on their lives, and now they can have an impact on people. So, again, just because your life has fallen into a mess does not mean that others cannot rely on you anymore. Others have learned from you, and now they can be the ones to help teach you. They can be like, look, like, hey man, you helped me with this, and I see you struggle with this. Like, remember, you helped me with this. Like, don't let this thing don't let this thing get to you. Don't let this one thing just try and destruct your life. God spared your life. If God wanted to take everything away from you, he would have taken your life as well, but he spared your life. That's important, that he spared your life. He took everything away from you. The most valuable thing that you could ever have is your own life. No money, no cars, not even your family. Your life. Your life is the most valuable thing that you get to live and breathe the air around you and get to see. That is valuable. So cherish that and use that to help grow, or be reminded that your effort and sharing with others will come back to help teach you. These people will come back along, and I believe that's what his friends are doing here. Like, look, dude, like, you helped us, or you had this impact on people, and we're trying to come and help you, trying to remind you of these things that you told us for so long, and that you did well for so long. And Job is just, and he's just really, not getting this grasp of this. And I can do believe that it is very tough for him, but that's where we have to be reminded, especially in today's world. Just because your life is a mess, and just because you've made some bad choices, doesn't mean you can't be redeemed, doesn't mean you can't be forgiven. God has the power to do anything. He loves you. He sent his son to die for you. We read this 2 days after Easter. Jesus is risen. So even though we're reading through Job, people, modern day people, just because you may have made some bad decisions or said some wrong things or did something that you regret, doesn't mean that you can't be redeemed. Your sin's already been paid for. Everything that you could have done to deserve death has been paid for. So be alive. Remember that you have the Lord. You have a great God, a great leader who's willing to help you and guide you to people that are willing to just embrace prayer with you. Find a mentor, whether that's a family member or a close friend or a pastor or a minister, whatever. Find that person. Don't let these bad things that happen to you rule your life. Don't be like this early version of Job that's just being ruled by these dark things that have come over his life, that has lost everything. Be willing to embrace what is given to you. God gives you so many great things. You are the greatest thing that he has ever created, and he is not ashamed of you. He loves you, and that is the end of chapter 8. I hope that you had a great start to your week. Don't let bad things try and rule your life. Remember, be courageous. Be the men and women that God has called you to be. And I promise you, you will see things happen to you. You will see great things happen to you in your life and your friends and your family, and you will be so glad that you made that decision. I hope I see you guys very soon.